margin for what you can source things on is becoming higher and higher because you will always have that base shipping cost. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Hyla Home. Here we talk about motherhood, natural living, and homemaking, which includes renovating our 1940s home. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to find quality clothing, whether you're looking for vintage pieces or all pieces that are all natural fibers, or just capsule wardrobe pieces that you plan on keeping for, if not the rest of your life, definitely several years. And maybe you're trying to steer away from fast fashion, so you want quality items that typically would cost a little bit more. So today I'm going to be sharing with you my top tips for how to save money and source those pieces in a sustainable way that will allow you to swap out your wardrobe for something better, but on a budget. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, some of you might have watched thrift hauls or what I got in the year 2023 or those sorts of videos might be wondering how to get started with this and where you even look to find these items. So I'm going to be sharing with you today about how to find these pieces, how to know if you're actually getting a good deal, and how to test for quality and also your sizing. A lot of the times what I see is maybe an item isn't actually on sale and you're comparing only the retail price to what this thrift store or what eBay is selling it for, and you see a big difference and you think, wow, this is a great deal, when maybe it's a super common item that people resell all the time. So that's what I'm going to be addressing today, is all of the ins and outs of all of that stuff. I've been sourcing clothing secondhand for about 5 years, if not longer, so I definitely have gotten into a good rhythm of buying and both selling and figuring out what things are worth and when it's maybe best to just put something aside because you can find it anywhere else. So my first tip, and this is the first thing that I started doing that saved me a lot of money when it came to thrifting, is knowing your size. That includes all of your measurements, knowing your personal style. Are you more bohemian? Are you more work preppy? Do you like casual and laid back? What is your style? And then what is your color palette? What colors look good on you? You might like the color teal, but does that really complement your skin tones, your eye color, and the way you do your hair? So knowing that, knowing which pieces are gonna flatter you and look good on you and complement you, that's gonna be the place to start. Because a big mistake I made when I first started thrifting is I found a linen piece that was 100% linen in orange large. And I would get it because it was $2. And the thing is, even though I saved tons of money on that piece, maybe it was a retail of $100, I never wore that piece. So I actually, as opposed to saving $98, I actually ended up spending $2 because it wasn't something I ended up using. So as opposed to saving $98 on a piece, I actually ended up wasting $2. And $2 isn't a lot, but some thrifted items go for higher, like up to $40. I have paid $40 for a secondhand piece. Now, was it worth it? Yes, very much so, but you have to know the cost that is going to actually benefit you. So if I'm going to pay $2 for a shirt, it needs to be one that works for me and one that I'm going to wear. I don't want to be just wasting dollars here and there. And if you're on a strict budget, this is especially important. So I recommend knowing your size in both US and European sizing, but then also I recommend you kind of having a general idea of what your size is in vintage sizing, because a lot of the time if you're sourcing vintage pieces or even just some older pieces, it will say a size 10 and maybe it even means like a size 4 or 5'6" in today's standards. A way to bypass the whole sizing thing, because again, even different brands hold different sizes. In some brands I'm a size 4 and in some brands I'm a size 8, so it just depends obviously on the brand, is knowing your measurements. I recommend figuring out what your bust measurement. And if you are curious on how to do that, what you're going to do is you're going to take a tape measure, and you're going to pull it across the fullest part of your bust, like you can see me doing here. Then you're going to want to know what your waist measurement is, and you're going to take that same tape measure, you're going to pull it across the smallest part of your waist, and that is your waist measurement. And you're going to want to know what your hip measurement is, which is pulling it across the largest part of your hips over your bum. And those three measurements, now there are others that you might want to consider knowing reselling as well, like your inseam, that's your pant leg, your shoulder measurement, as well as your sleeve length. Those are all great measurements, but the first three that I listed are probably the most important when it comes to sizing, especially vintage sizing, because waists and hips back then were a lot smaller, and sometimes the waist to hip ratio isn't necessarily gonna work for your body type. And I'm not saying that because we're much bigger than they were back then. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that for me personally, when it comes to vintage sizing, I've noticed that my hips can't get in half of the things that my waist can. So that's just something you might want to look into when you're sourcing clothing. Now, the other thing is knowing your style. There's several times that I've gotten things that worked as far as they fit me well, but they just weren't my style. And I thought, well, I'm going to dye this, I'm going to alter this. Most of the time, you're not actually going to get to it. So I recommend, if you're on a budget, just sourcing things that are going to fit within your style, unless you're super crafty with the sewing machine or even with dyeing your own clothes. But for me, if you're on budget, I would just recommend buying things you know you're gonna wear. If you typically wear green t-shirts, then get that linen green t-shirt. But if you know green is really not your color and you really don't wear t-shirts all the time, maybe that piece isn't for you. And then, of course, this kind of goes with the last thing, knowing your color palette. So for example, I don't really look good in a lot of bright oranges, yellows, or pinks, so I avoid those colors. I also don't really find that I enjoy wearing blacks and grays. I am wearing black today, but I'm wearing a nursing shirt so that I can hold my little baby. But for me, I've been sourcing a lot of grays and then I never go and pull them. So something I'm doing this year when it comes to thrifting and reselling is getting rid of most of my gray things because I don't wear them, and being sure that I don't pick out gray things when I thrift because I don't wear them. So that's just something to know when it comes to thrifting. So pick pieces that you're going to wear, that you're gonna love, and that you're gonna keep for about 2 to 3 years at a minimum. Tip number 2, do not purchase something unless you know the resale value. Now, this tip is only if it is over $5, or I guess let's say $7, because Goodwill sources a lot of things at $7. Almost anything from Goodwill, if you don't know the resale value, it's fine to purchase it because it's $7. You probably couldn't get much cheaper than that. However, if it's over that price, I recommend figuring out what it's reselling for. There are a lot of brands that not all of their items resell for the same value. Now, here's an example, because this is a brand I've been sourcing more of lately and learning more about, is Madewell. Some of their dresses resell for about $15 and some of them resell for $75. And if you were to go to their website, especially their dresses go for about $140, maybe between $125 and $170. So something I've noticed is red items. Red items almost typically always go for much less. So for example, when I'm looking at dresses, a lot of the dresses that I see that are super low on the cost, they're red, they're orange, they're very loud prints, because fewer people feel comfortable wearing that than the majority of people. The majority of people tend to go towards neutrals or blacks or things that are safer. So those items might be harder to come by. So knowing what the resale value is, because you see a Madewell dress for $145 on their website and you see it reselling for $50, you think that's a great deal. But maybe it's an item that often gets put up on eBay or Poshmark or Mercari, and that item actually goes for around $15. So knowing what the resale value is very important when you're going to buy something, because you don't want to pay too much for an item that you could have gotten for half of what you paid for it. And if you're curious about how to figure out what the resale price is, what I would recommend is going on eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari and typing in that item and seeing what they sold for, because if you know somebody else paid that amount for, it's likely that they also had been searching and sourcing. And so say you see a Madewell dress sold for $25 and you see maybe another one for $35 and they're all around that range, then you know, okay, if I find this one for about $30 or $25, it's a good deal, and so I'm going to get it. Whereas if you see one for maybe twice as much as what these other ones sold for, I'd hold off, because eventually another one will come and be listed for around that lower price. I do want to say there's a caveat with this one tip, and that is with vintage items, because there are so less options when it comes to vintage items. If you see it for a good price, I would buy it. So an example of this is there had been a wool dress that I had my eye on for literal years. My friend had sourced it at a random thrift store, probably for around $7 in West Virginia, and it was gorgeous on her. And I had been searching for years, and I came across it, and it was $80, and I didn't end up buying it, but that would have been worth it. So like that dress was kind of, obviously eventually there were two, but for me to have waited years and just only have found one, that is an example where you really just, if it's a vintage item, you're probably not going to come across it. So even if you see that it sold for much cheaper than you're buying it for now, with vintage items, there's just so much fewer in circulation that you probably just ought to go for it. Tip number 3 is use Google Lens. I use Google Lens all the time. So for example, if I have a dress that I really am looking to buy and I can't find it at my local thrift store, can't find it at Goodwill, can't find it on eBay, any of these search engines with the keywords that I'm using, I will actually take a screenshot of that item if I can find a picture of it, and then I will Google Lens search it. Google Lens search is really good. I've found tons of items that way, and oftentimes you can see it pop up listings from eBay, Poshmark, Mercari, Depop, and RealReal. And when it does that, you can actually compare price right there on the page. And a lot of the times it will also pull up sold listings or recently sold listings, so you can also see what it has recently gone for. So definitely utilize Google Lens if you are trying to source your wardrobe. Tip number 6 is shop across multiple platforms. Personally, what I do is I use eBay, I use Poshmark, I use Mercari. Now there are two more, which is Depop and RealReal. I've only bought one thing off of RealReal, and I've never purchased off of Depop because I've just never found anything there. Don't actually know how that one works since I haven't used it. But with my experience with the three that I most often use, which is eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari, this is kind of what I found. With eBay, that's most of the time where I find my vintage pieces. Those are, people are selling either from their grandmother's wardrobe, or maybe they're just trying to clear out their closet, and those pieces actually tend to be pretty affordable, a good deal, and then unique. eBay is also the place to find obscure pieces, because along the same lines is why it's a good place to find vintage pieces. You just have people listing. eBay was kind of one of the first secondhand platforms to come up there, so it's kind of the first one that older people think of when they want to sell something. So a lot of the times you just have people wanting to clear out their closets. They don't really care to make a big profit, and so you're going to find kind of really cool pieces for cheap on eBay. The other thing I find a lot of the times on eBay is mass-produced kind of fast fashion items. So like if you're trying to buy last year's universal thread 100% cotton gauze tie dress or something like that, I don't know if they had that style last year, I'm just making an example, then eBay's maybe the place you want to go, because you can type in universal threads, 100% cotton, tie dress, wrap dress, whatever keywords you use, and you're going to find people, or I guess sellers, who purchased a ton of those universal thread dresses. They probably bought a pallet of them, and they've been storing them in their basement, and now they're selling you one at a time, and you can actually buy them pretty much for either the cost that it was the year that it first came out, or sometimes even a little bit cheaper. A lot of the times if you hit save on the watch list and then wait a couple of days, or even later that day, the seller will offer you a discount and you can purchase it that way and save some money. So eBay is definitely a good place for like vintage, obscure, kind of unique pieces, and then also those super common fast fashion sort of pieces that maybe are from previous years that you want to add to your wardrobe. Now, when you're trying to source things on eBay, they have a pretty good search engine, so I would use a lot of keyword items for their search bar when you're trying to find an item. So if you want gauze cotton, then I would put gauze cotton, or cotton muslin, or floral, or white, or anything specific, smocked, bell sleeves. I would use those words because eBay pulls from so many listings, and they don't necessarily limit themselves to those keywords in your search. However, a lot of the people that do sell on eBay utilize SEO, and you're going to be able to find them. If you use such a broad search term like universal threads dress. You're going to be scrolling forever because there's just so much content on eBay. So that's why with eBay, I do recommend using more specific SEO, and that way you can actually find what you're looking for much cheaper. They do have a lens search, but I've just found that to not work really at all, so I don't even bother with that. I wouldn't even recommend wasting your time trying. Just with eBay, when it comes to looking for items, I would be very specific in the SEO, and then actually when you go to sort lowest to highest. And then here's some examples of items I've sourced this year from eBay. I got this beautiful Orvis vintage skirt that is 100% cotton. It looked amazing through pregnancy, and then because it's got this cinched waist in the back, I've been able to continue wearing it. So just a great vintage piece that I sourced on eBay. I got this oak and fort dress, which is a little bit big, and I'm super sad about that, but I'm keeping it anyway because it is probably one of my favorite pieces in my wardrobe, and it's just super flowy and beautiful. And then I also got this vintage wool cardigan, which is just super chunky and warm. It works almost as good as a coat. Now, Poshmark is the other one I use all the time, and Poshmark has some controversy because I kind of feel like it's an influencer selling platform. So you have people who are definitely trying to make money on Poshmark. You don't necessarily get the great deals from people who don't know what they're doing and just listing things on eBay because they're trying to clear out the wardrobe. People who are selling on Poshmark typically know the value of things, and they're trying to make a little bit of a profit. So for Poshmark, I typically go there if I want to buy a Madewell dress, maybe a Carly Jean Los Angeles type item, maybe something from New Flora, something middle of the line, a little bit more expensive, not buying universal threads on there, not buying any Walmart or Target brands really at all. Nothing that I could get for under $15. I'm going to be looking for a little bit higher end things, maybe things that retail for $125 to $200, and that's where I'm going to be looking for someone who's trying to source out that item but is doing it for much less. And you might be thinking, okay, well, if people know what the cost of things are and they're trying to get it sold, will that even help me? And I will say yes. I recently had in my like list, which is what the watch list on Poshmark is called, a CGLA, Carly Jean Los Angeles, beautiful reef dress in a color I wanted, and it was listed for $50 with $7 shipping, because almost everything on Poshmark is $7 shipping, because that's Poshmark's standard shipping. And I just mainly had it there to see if she would lower the price over the time. The way Poshmark works is if you want to send the people who are watching your item a discount, you actually have to send them 10% off at least, plus discounted shipping. And if you have sent them 10%, say in the last week, they're going to actually make you lower that to 20%. So every time you as a seller are receiving an offer, it's always less than the previous offer. So sometimes you can get things for really cheap. So for example, with this CGLA dress, it was listed for $50. I was kind of seeing if they would give me an offer. They offered for the dress to be purchased for $10 with $5 shipping. And unfortunately, I wasn't looking at my phone and I missed it. Somebody else snatched it up. But that's just an example of how I could have gotten something for super cheap that typically goes for around $30 or $50. So for Poshmark, it's hit or miss. But like I said, I would typically put items on my watch list for that, which typically sell for higher. The reason mainly has to do with the shipping, just because standard shipping is $7. Nobody's really you're not gonna get anything for cheaper than $7. And so for eBay, you can. I've gotten things as low as $4, but for Poshmark, I'm looking to spend more between $20 and $50 on that app. So if you're searching on Poshmark, Poshmark can be a little bit tricky to search because the search results actually come up in recently added, not best match or lowest price or anything like that, where most of these search engines do come up like that. So for Poshmark, I utilize their filters quite a bit. Their color filters, whether or not it's a woman's garment, those sorts of things. eBay's I don't as much because it just typically people don't take the time to fill it out. On Poshmark, people do, and actually you're required to fill it out when you're listing the item, so it makes filtering way more accurate. So I actually use Poshmark's filters. Their SEO, their search engine box actually isn't as useful. I pretty much type in something super basic there, like maybe 100% wool, and then I'll go through the filters and type in women's sweater in blue, and then be able to find something that way. You can also filter out brands, so that's really great. And then the other thing I use on Poshmark, I probably use this more often than I use their actual search engine, is their lens search. Now they have a pretty good one. Theirs is almost as good as like the Google lens, although not quite as good. So if you have a screenshot of the item you want, hit their lens and see if you can find it, because chances are they might have it and find it that way. So I definitely would utilize that when you're trying to find items on Poshmark. That being said, this is the things I found this last year from Poshmark. I got this beautiful Madewell dress, which is just super comfortable. It's cotton gauze and it's great for wearing around the house, breastfeeding friendly, just amazing. I got these clogs, which are my go-to shoes. I wear them in the winter, I'll be wearing them in the summer. They go with socks, they go with about everything. Again, like I said, I didn't really have as many scores on Poshmark last year, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good platform for trying to find something secondhand. Now the third one is Mercari, and Mercari is kind of up and coming, or so it seems to me. I hadn't heard of it. I actually thought it was maybe a scam site until I purchased something off of it, but I've been able to find great deals on Mercari. They seem to have more like just people cleaning out their closet type items. So this is where if you're wanting to find like something from Walmart that's out of season, something from Target, maybe just generic things that you don't care what the brand is, like just you want cotton t-shirts, so you just type in cotton t-shirts. Literally, those sorts of things are what you'd find on Mercari. Now, every once in a while, you can find like a golden item. I got a beautiful vintage sweater that I absolutely love. I've never seen anything like it. So, every once in a while, you can find some cool pieces. Like I said, it's people typically cleaning out their closets. So, in the same way that you can find beautiful, obscure pieces on eBay, this I think is going to be the same way. Although, right now, they're kind of less common, but you can still find them. For searching on Mercari, I definitely recommend that you use super basic SEO because there aren't as many items listed, and typically the people listing them don't really realize the value of the things they're listing. So you might have like a beautiful linen dress, but they don't know it's linen, and they don't know that this brand is super expensive. So you just type in green dress and that dress would come up, but if you typed in anything else, it wouldn't. So with Mercari, I definitely recommend just super basic SEO. Like think of something that you want. If you want a green dress, even if you want it to be cotton or linen, just type in green dress or green cotton dress, because that's still basic enough. And chances are the search for that is going to only be like this big, and you can scroll through all of them and see if any of them are what you're looking for. Obviously, the caveat is if you type in a super basic SEO and you're scrolling for forever, then maybe be a little bit more specific in your SEO. But for the most part, I've had pretty good luck using super simple SEO with Mercari. Now, what I sourced off of Mercari this year, like I said, is this beautiful vintage sweater. It's one of my favorite pieces now for winter, and it's just super cozy and gorgeous. I'm being super careful when I wear it and wash it because I don't want it to get ruined or destroyed or anything like that. And then I also got this beautiful 100% wool from Scotland sweater for my daughter that is also just gorgeous. I'm pretty sure it was handmade and she loves it. Now the other one is RealReal, and I've only used that once. It was for an oaken fort dress that I had been looking for. I was trying to get the smaller size, got it in a smaller size, and it didn't fit, so I actually ended up reselling it. They seem to have more like uppity, super expensive brands that I've not even heard the name of, but they seem to go for quite a bit. I don't really see them as saving you unless you're looking for Gucci. They're not really great for sourcing secondhand on a budget. You might as well just buy brand new. Now the other place that I totally forgot to mention is ThredUp. And ThredUp's hit or miss because they have a pretty high shipping cost unless you have a coupon code for free shipping. And a lot of the times their items you don't necessarily know if you're getting the right size. So I never trust their measurements. Instead, what I do is I buy off of their site if I know the brand and the size that I would need, because otherwise a lot of the times the measurements that they're giving are just not right, and there's not a customer service that you can ask ahead of time to double check and make sure that the thing you're buying is actually going to fit. So with ThredUp, the types of items I recommend trying to source off of there are items that middle of the line brands, again, like things that retail for about $100 to $200, around that margin, maybe even $50 to $200, and items that are typically rare. So even if they're like from a Madewell brand, and I'll use this as an example, there was a Madewell dress that I found, and I'm looking for another Madewell dress actually, and the print that it was in was actually hard to come by, and because of that, that dress was reselling for between $50 and $75. Now, I really wanted this dress. I thought it was super flattering, and was definitely a piece that I wanted in my wardrobe, and I couldn't find it for affordable on Poshmark or Mercari or even eBay. Well, on ThredUp, because they don't look at that sort of thing, they just see, hey, this is a Madewell dress, this is what it retails for, so we take off about this percentage of the price and sell it for this. That dress in particular was going for $25, which was outrageously cheap for what it had been going for. So I ended up getting it and super happy with it. So things like that are good to get off of ThredUp, because again, they're not looking for specific styles to see if those are going for more. They're just simply selling based off of what the retail cost for the brand was. The other thing with ThredUp is they often have sales going, so you almost always can find a coupon code and get between 10 and 45% off. Sometimes even higher, like 60, but I don't really see that for higher end brands like Madewell or something like that. And the items I was able to source from there this past year was obviously the Madewell dress that I'm talking to you about now. I love that dress, it's so great. But then also this sweat set, because since they don't look into what the retail cost would be for this, I got the sweatshirt for $14 and the sweatpants for under $30, and got the whole set for under $50, which is super cheap, because normally sweat sets like that go for about $50 to $100 if they're 100% cotton, which these were. So again, just finding items that you know in your head match, but they don't necessarily put two and two together. And my last tip, which is shop local. You're gonna find all of these things much cheaper if you get them local, because you don't have to pay for shipping, and shipping is increasing every year, and so your margin for what you can source things on online is becoming higher and higher, because you will always have that base shipping cost, which is at the moment around $7. So definitely, if you can find things local, that is the place to go. That's going to save you the most money, because you're not having to pay for shipping. And I recommend like Goodwills or thrift stores or even consignment shops. Antique stores, you're not going to get as big of a bang for your buck, because they also know what things cost, and plus you're not going to find modern clothing there as well. You're going to find more like vintage stuff. But for saving money, going local is really your best bet. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. I really hope that you all have a blessed day. To comment below if you've ever used Depop, because again, like I said, I've never used that, so be good to hear what your experience is with them. If you like this content, please subscribe and hit the little bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future videos. Thank you so much for bearing with me as always, and you all have a blessed day. Bye.